My son's new girlfriend kept asking about my medications. Not once, not twice, but every single time she visited my house in Phoenix. Vanessa would stand in my kitchen, coffee in hand, and casually glance at the pill organizer on my counter. "What are all these for, Margaret?" she'd ask, as if she were just making conversation. The first time, I thought she was being polite, showing interest in my health. The second time, I figured she was just one of those anxious types who worried about older people. By the fifth time, something in my gut twisted. My son David would laugh it off. "Mom, she's a nurse. She's just concerned about you. You know how medical people are." But I'd spent 35 years as a pharmacist before retiring. I'd learned to pay attention to patterns, and Vanessa's pattern was becoming very clear. I met Vanessa 4 months ago when David brought her home for Easter. 28 years old, beautiful, worked as a home health nurse in Scottsdale. She said all the right things, complimented my cooking, asked thoughtful questions about my late husband Tom's military service. She seemed perfect. Maybe too perfect. Tom died 2 years ago. Heart attack, sudden, no warning. One day he was trimming the roses. The next day I was a widow at 68. Suddenly I found myself alone in this house we'd bought 40 years ago when the neighborhood was brand new. Now I was surrounded by memories and more prescription bottles than I cared to count. David checked on me constantly after his father died. Too constantly, actually. He worried I was lonely. Worried I couldn't manage on my own. Worried about my health. When he met Vanessa at some hospital charity event and they started dating, I was relieved. He needed someone to focus on besides his aging mother. The relationship moved fast. 2 months of dating, then she was at every family dinner, every holiday, practically living at David's condo. David talked about her constantly. "Mom, Vanessa thinks you should see a cardiologist about your blood pressure. Mom, Vanessa says you're taking too many medications. Mom, Vanessa thinks we should talk about your long-term care plans." At first, I thought she was just being helpful. She was a nurse, after all. She knew about elder care. But then I started noticing other things. She'd pick up my pill bottles and read the labels carefully. She'd ask detailed questions about my doctors, what tests they ran, what my blood work showed. She wanted to know about my medical history, my insurance coverage, whether I had long-term care insurance. "Margaret," she said one Sunday in June, "have you thought about what would happen if you had a fall? Or if your memory started declining? Who has your medical power of attorney?" "David has it," I said. "We set that up after Tom died." She nodded slowly. "That's good, but you should really consider updating your advance directives. Medical science changes so fast. What you wrote 2 years ago might not reflect current best practices." I smiled politely and changed the subject. But later that evening, after they left, I sat in my living room and stared at my medication organizer. 7 different prescriptions. Blood pressure, cholesterol, thyroid, diabetes, blood thinner, arthritis pain, and a mild antidepressant my doctor prescribed after Tom died. I was a pharmacist. I knew what each drug did, knew the interactions, knew the side effects. I managed them carefully, but I also knew something else. I knew that in the wrong hands, medications could be weapons. The next day, I did something I'd never thought I'd do. I called my lawyer, Patricia Chen, who'd handled Tom's estate. "Patricia, I need you to look into someone for me. Vanessa Hart, she's a home health nurse, says she works for Scottsdale Senior Care Services. Margaret, is this about David's girlfriend?" "Just a precaution." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "If you have concerns, you should talk to David." "Not yet. I might be wrong." But I wasn't wrong. My gut had saved patients' lives too many times. When a prescription didn't look right, when a drug interaction seemed off, I'd always trusted that instinct. And right now, every instinct I had was screaming. 3 days later, Patricia called. "Margaret, we need to meet." Not on the phone. I drove to her office in Tempe. She closed the door and handed me a folder. "Vanessa Hart is exactly who she says she is. Licensed RN. Works for Scottsdale Senior Care. Clean record with the nursing board. No malpractice claims but?" She pulled out another document. But I had our investigator dig deeper. "Vanessa has worked for 4 different home health agencies in the past 6 years. That's unusual. Nurses usually stay with one agency longer." So I made some calls. My hands tightened on the armrest. 3 of her former agencies wouldn't comment, citing privacy. But one office manager, off the record, told me something interesting. Vanessa was excellent with patients initially, very attentive. But she had a pattern of getting very close to elderly male patients who lived alone. 2 of those patients changed their wills to include her. Both died within 6 months of making those changes. I felt cold. Died of what? Natural causes, according to the death certificates. One was heart failure, the other was complications from diabetes. Both were elderly, both had multiple health conditions. Nothing suspicious on paper, but both families were unhappy. One family actually hired a lawyer to contest the will, claiming undue influence. They settled out of court. Vanessa received $75,000 from that estate. The other family didn't sue. They were too grief-stricken and the amount was smaller, about $30,000. I stared at Patricia. What about David? David is 34, healthy, has a good job as a hospital administrator. Not exactly a target for inheritance fraud, but I am. Patricia nodded slowly. Margaret, how much are you worth? Tom and I lived modestly. We bought this house in 1984 for $85,000. Now it was worth close to $600,000. Tom's military pension stopped when he died, but his life insurance paid $250,000. I had my pharmacy pension, Social Security, and our savings. Plus Tom had invested carefully. He'd been a financial advisor for the VA before retiring. Total assets: about $1.2 million. Not wealthy by Phoenix standards, but comfortable. And I lived alone, with a son who worried constantly about my health. Patricia, David has my medical power of attorney. I know. I helped you set that up. If something happened to me, if I became incapacitated, David would make all my medical decisions, yes. And if David were married to someone with medical knowledge, someone who understood how to manage medications, how to create conditions that looked like natural decline. Patricia's face was grim. Margaret, you're talking about murder. I'm talking about the suspicious deaths of 2 elderly patients who'd named Vanessa in their wills, which were investigated and found to be natural causes, because nobody was looking closely enough. I went home that day and did something I'd never done before. I started keeping detailed records. Every medication I took, the exact time, the exact dose. I took photos of my pill organizer every day. I documented every time Vanessa visited, what she asked about, what she touched. The following week, Vanessa came by while David was at work. I was in the neighborhood, she said brightly. Thought I'd check on you. She'd never done that before. We sat in the kitchen and I made tea. She kept glancing at my medications on the counter. Margaret, I've been thinking. You're taking so many pills. Have you considered asking your doctor about simplifying your regimen? Actually, I had. My pharmacist's mind knew that polypharmacy, taking too many medications, was a real problem for seniors. But I also knew each of my prescriptions was necessary. My doctor reviews everything regularly, I said carefully. Of course. But sometimes doctors don't see the whole picture. Like, you're taking warfarin for blood clot prevention, right? I nodded. Warfarin was my blood thinner, prescribed after Tom died because I'd developed atrial fibrillation from the stress. And you're taking that NSAID for arthritis pain. Meloxicam, yes. She shook her head. Margaret, that combination is dangerous. NSAIDs increase bleeding risk when you're on warfarin. You should really talk to your doctor about switching. I smiled. I'm aware of the interaction. That's why I have my INR checked monthly and keep my NSAID dose low. My rheumatologist and cardiologist coordinate on this. Her expression flickered. Just for a second. Surprise? Annoyance? Still, she said. At your age, you should be careful. Falls are so dangerous for seniors on blood thinners. One bad fall and you could have a brain bleed. The way she said it made my skin crawl. After she left, I called Patricia again. I need surveillance, Margaret. She just reminded me, quite pointedly, that I'm on a blood thinner and that a fall could cause a brain bleed. In my house, where she's been several times and knows the layout. Patricia was quiet. Then, I know someone. A private investigator who specializes in elder abuse cases. Very discreet. Hire them. The investigator's name was James Riley. Former police detective, now specialized in financial crimes against seniors. He was worth every penny. Within a week, he had information that made everything clear. Mrs. Chen, he said, sitting in my living room while I poured coffee, Vanessa Hart has a pattern. She targets elderly people with adult children who live nearby but not in the same house. The adult children are involved, concerned, but not present enough to see day-to-day changes. She gets close to the elderly person, usually through her job as a home health nurse. Then she starts making suggestions about medications, about health concerns, about long-term planning. She's subtle. She plants seeds. Seeds of what? Doubt, fear, dependence. She makes the adult children worry their parent isn't managing well. She suggests maybe the parent is declining mentally, missing doses, confused about medications. Then she offers to help. My blood ran cold. David's been talking about me moving to assisted living. James nodded. Has Vanessa been encouraging that? She says she worries about me living alone. Says it's just a matter of time before I have a fall or forget my medications. Classic pattern. Once you're in a facility, or once you're dependent on more care, she suggests she could be your private caregiver, usually through the family, so it seems legitimate. Then she has access. Complete access to you, your home, your medications, your life. And then things start to go wrong. You have a bad reaction to medications. You become confused, maybe from what looks like normal dementia. You fall, maybe more than once. Your health declines rapidly. The family is devastated but not suspicious because Vanessa is right there, being helpful, being supportive. The family naturally includes her in more decisions. If you're really declining, they might give her power of attorney because she's a medical professional and she's there every day. Or if the son marries her, she becomes family legally, with access to everything. I felt sick. The 2 patients who died? Both followed this exact pattern. Both deteriorated rapidly while in Vanessa's care. Both had accidents or complications that seemed tragic but not suspicious. One fell and hit his head. Died from the brain bleed 3 days later. The other had a hypoglycemic episode, went into a coma, never recovered. Both were on medications Vanessa had access to. Can you prove she did anything to them? No? That's why she's never been charged. She's very, very careful. Everything looks natural. The deaths are investigated, ruled accidental or due to underlying health conditions. The families are too grief-stricken to push for deeper investigations. And Vanessa moves on to the next city, the next agency, the next target. Why hasn't anyone stopped her? Because elder abuse is notoriously hard to prosecute. Even when families suspect something, they can't prove it. And Vanessa is smart. She spaces out her targets. She doesn't do this constantly, just every couple of years. Just enough to supplement her income significantly. I sat back in my chair. What do I do? You could go to the police. But with no concrete evidence of a crime in progress, they can't do much. You could tell David. But he won't believe me. He'll think I'm being paranoid, that I'm jealous of his girlfriend, that maybe I'm declining mentally and imagining things. James nodded. Exactly what Vanessa would want him to think. So what, then? We catch her in the act. We create a situation where she thinks she has an opportunity, and we document everything. Over the next 2 weeks, James set up tiny cameras in my home, hidden in smoke detectors, in picture frames, in the kitchen clock. He also set up a way for me to signal him if I felt I was in immediate danger. Don't take any risks, he said firmly. If you feel threatened at any point, you activate the signal and I'll have police there in under 3 minutes. I also did something else. I told David the first was feeling overwhelmed. Son, I said one evening when he came for dinner, I've been thinking about what Vanessa said. About my medications. Maybe I'm not managing as well as I thought. His face showed immediate concern. Mom, what do you mean? I've been forgetting doses sometimes, getting confused about timing. Last week I almost took my morning pills twice. This was a lie. I'd never missed a dose in my life. But I needed David to worry. Mom, that's serious. With your warfarin, you can't be inconsistent with dosing. I know. Maybe I do need more help. I've been talking to Vanessa about this. She thinks I should have someone checking on me more regularly. David looked relieved. Yes. Would you be open to that? What if Vanessa helped? Just for a little while? She could stop by a few times a week, make sure I'm taking everything correctly, organize my pills. I hated saying it. Hated inviting danger into my home. But James had assured me the surveillance was comprehensive and he'd be monitoring everything. David's face lit up. Mom, that would be perfect. Vanessa would love to help. She's been so worried about you. I bet she has. That weekend, Vanessa came over with a new weekly pill organizer. Much bigger than my old one, with 4 compartments per day instead of 3. This will be so much better, she said cheerfully. Morning, noon, evening, and bedtime. We'll get everything perfectly organized. She proceeded to empty all my pill bottles and count out doses for the week. I watched her carefully. You know, she said casually, you're taking a lot of pills at once in the morning. It might be easier on your stomach to split some of them up. Take some at noon instead. My doctor has them scheduled this way for a reason, I said. I know, but you have a sensitive stomach. I've noticed you complaining about nausea. If we moved your metformin to noon and your atorvastatin to bedtime, you might feel better. Metformin was my diabetes medication. Atorvastatin was my cholesterol medication. There was no medical reason to move them, but there was no harm either. Unless, okay, I said slowly, if you think that's better. She beamed. Great. And you know, this meloxicam you're taking for arthritis, the dose seems high. Maybe we should cut it in half, see if that helps your stomach too? That's when I knew. Meloxicam, my anti-inflammatory, wasn't causing stomach problems, but if she convinced me to lower the dose or stop it entirely, my arthritis pain would get worse. I'd be less mobile, more likely to fall. And falls were exactly what she'd mentioned before. I'll talk to my doctor, I said. Her smile tightened just a fraction. Of course. After she left, I immediately took photos of the pill organizer she'd set up. Then I took every pill out and checked them against my bottles. Everything seemed correct. For now, but I didn't trust it. That night, I carefully repacked my own organizer with the correct medications at the correct times. I kept Vanessa's organizer on the counter where she'd left it, but I didn't use it. Over the next week, she stopped by 3 times. Each time, she checked the organizer, noted which pills I'd supposedly taken, asked how I was feeling. You seem a bit off, Margaret, she said on Wednesday. Are you feeling dizzy at all? I wasn't, but I said, a little. Is that normal? Could be your blood pressure medication. Are you taking it consistently? Of course. She pursed her lips. You know, at your age, maybe the dose is too high. Low blood pressure can cause dizziness and falls. There it was again. Falls. I'll mention it to my doctor. On Friday, she came by while I was supposedly napping. I heard her in the kitchen. I stayed in my bedroom, watching on my phone the live feed from James's hidden cameras. She opened my medication organizer. She took out 3 pills from the Saturday morning compartment. Then she reached into her purse and took out a small pill bottle. She replaced the 3 pills with different ones, carefully matching the sizes and colors. My hands shook as I watched. She closed the organizer, looked around to make sure everything looked normal, and left quietly. I waited until her car pulled away. Then I called James. She just switched out my medications. I saw it. We got it on camera. Don't touch anything. Within an hour, James was at my house with a colleague who specialized in pharmaceutical analysis. They carefully photographed everything, then removed the switched pills for testing. What are they? I asked. James's colleague examined them carefully. I'll need to run proper tests, but based on size, shape, and markings, these look like higher doses of your blood pressure medication. If I'm right, these are 20 mg lisinopril tablets. Your prescription is for 10 mg. My stomach dropped. If I took double my blood pressure medication, your blood pressure would drop dangerously low. You'd feel dizzy, weak, you'd likely fall. And you're on warfarin, so any fall could cause serious internal bleeding. She's trying to kill me. She's trying to create a situation that looks like an accident. Elderly woman on multiple medications, becomes confused, takes wrong doses, has a fall, dies from the complications. Tragic but not suspicious. That evening, James and I met with Patricia and a detective from the Phoenix Police Department Elder Abuse Unit. We have video of her switching the medications, James explained. We have the pills she switched them with, which we can prove are not what Mrs. Chen was prescribed. We have evidence of a pattern of similar behavior with previous victims. The detective, a woman named Sarah Martinez, reviewed everything carefully. This is good, she said finally. We can bring her in for questioning. But I'm going to be honest with you, Mrs. Chen. A good lawyer could argue she made an honest mistake, that she was trying to help organize your medications and grabbed the wrong bottle. Without evidence that she intended to harm you, this might not result in serious charges. What about the deaths of her previous patients? I asked. Both were investigated and ruled natural causes at the time. Without new evidence showing she caused those deaths, we can't charge her for them now. I felt defeated. So she gets away with it? I didn't say that, Detective Martinez said. I said we need more evidence of intent, which means we need her to incriminate herself. How? She smiled grimly. We let her think it worked. The plan was risky. The plan was terrifying. But it was the only way. The next morning, David received a panicked call from Scottsdale Memorial Hospital. His mother had been admitted after a fall. Her blood pressure had dropped dangerously low. She was unconscious. David raced to the hospital. Vanessa, of course, came with him. What they didn't know was that I wasn't at Scottsdale Memorial. I was at a different hospital across town, perfectly fine, working with Detective Martinez. The woman in the hospital bed at Scottsdale Memorial was an undercover officer, rigged with monitoring equipment and surrounded by hidden cameras and microphones. David was devastated. The nurse, a real nurse, working with police, explained that his mother had apparently taken double doses of several medications. They'd found her pill organizer, and it was clear she'd been confused about her medications recently. This is exactly what we were worried about, Vanessa said to David in the hallway, her voice full of concern. The cameras caught everything. She wasn't managing her medications properly. She must have gotten confused, taken too much. David was crying. Will she be okay? I don't know, Vanessa said softly. Blood pressure that low, at her age, the brain can be deprived of oxygen. Even if she wakes up, there might be cognitive damage. Oh God. Vanessa put her arm around him. David, I know this is hard, but you might need to prepare yourself. Your mother might not recover from this, and even if she does, she probably won't be able to live independently anymore. She'll need full-time care. Vanessa nodded. I could help with that. If you want, I could take a leave from my job, move in with her for a while. Make sure she has round-the-clock supervision. Would you do that? Of course. I love you, and I care about your mother. Whatever you need. David hugged her, grateful. The cameras caught the small smile on Vanessa's face over his shoulder, a smile that said, I won. But she hadn't won. 2 hours later, Detective Martinez walked into that hospital room with 2 uniformed officers. Vanessa Hart, you're under arrest for attempted murder, tampering with medication, and elder abuse. Vanessa's face went white. What? No, I didn't. We have video of you switching Mrs. Chen's medications. We have the pills you replaced them with, which were double the prescribed dose. We have testimony about your pattern of behavior with previous elderly patients. You have the right to remain silent. David stood frozen in shock as they read Vanessa her rights and let her out in handcuffs. Then Detective Martinez turned to David. Your mother is fine. She's at a different hospital, completely safe. This was a sting operation. I'm sorry we couldn't tell you, but we needed Vanessa to believe it was real. David's legs gave out. He sat down hard in the hallway chair. My mother is okay? She's perfectly fine. She's actually the one who uncovered all of this. She's a very smart woman. An hour later, I arrived at Scottsdale Memorial. David saw me walk in, healthy and whole, and burst into tears. Mom, I hugged him while he sobbed. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry we had to do it this way. You're not hurt. You didn't fall? No? It was staged. We had to catch her, David. She was trying to kill me. He pulled back, staring at me. I don't understand. Vanessa was helping you. She cared about you. No, son. She was positioning herself to inherit from me, through you. She's done this before, to other elderly people. She tampers with their medications, causes falls, makes it look like natural decline. 2 of her previous patients died exactly this way. I showed him everything. The investigation files, the videos, the evidence. He watched the video of Vanessa switching my pills. He listened to the audio of her telling him I probably wouldn't recover, that she'd take care of me, all while hiding that small, triumphant smile. When it was over, he looked broken. I brought her into your life, he said quietly. I trusted her. I almost got you killed. No. I took his hands. She's a professional con artist. She's sophisticated, careful, convincing. She fooled you because that's what she does. This isn't your fault. I should have listened when you were uncomfortable. I didn't tell you I was uncomfortable. I hid it because I wanted to be sure. He was quiet for a long time. Then, Mom, how did you know? She kept asking about my medications. Every single visit, she focused on them. And she kept talking about falls, about blood thinners, about what could go wrong. She was setting up the narrative for what she planned to do. But you're a pharmacist. You'd notice if your medications were wrong. Yes. Which is probably why she was moving slowly, establishing trust first, getting access, making small changes. If I'd used the pill organizer she set up and didn't double-check everything, I might not have noticed the switched pills until after I'd taken them. And by then, it would have been too late. David dropped his head into his hands. I feel like an idiot. You're not an idiot. You're a loving son who wanted to help his mother. She exploited that. That's what predators do. We sat in that hospital hallway for a long time, while across town, Vanessa was being processed into jail. The trial took 8 months. Vanessa's lawyer tried every defense. Honest mistake, she was trying to help. The switched pills were accidental. There was no proof of intent to harm. But the video was damning. The pattern with previous patients was damning. And then there was the pharmaceutical analysis. The expert testified that the pills Vanessa had replaced mine with weren't just higher doses. They were a specific combination that, when taken together with my other medications, would create a dangerous drug interaction. The kind of interaction a trained nurse would absolutely know about. This wasn't accidental, the expert said. This was calculated. She chose pills that would lower Mrs. Chen's blood pressure to dangerous levels and increase her bleeding risk simultaneously. She created the perfect conditions for a fatal fall that would look like an accident. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Vanessa was sentenced to 15 years. The district attorney also reopened investigations into the deaths of her 2 previous patients. Based on the pattern evidence, those families were finally able to get some closure. David took it hard. He went to therapy to deal with the betrayal, the guilt, the horror of what almost happened. It took him a long time to trust anyone again, especially anyone in healthcare. As for me, I'm still in my house, still managing my own medications, still fiercely independent. But I did make some changes. I installed better security cameras. I got a medical alert system that monitors for falls and calls 911 automatically. I joined a senior center where I've made friends who check on each other regularly. And I started volunteering with the Elder Abuse Prevention Council, teaching other seniors how to recognize financial and medical exploitation. Because Vanessa wasn't unique. There are others like her, targeting vulnerable elderly people who live alone, who are on complex medication regimens, who have adult children who care but can't be there 24/7. These predators count on isolation, on complexity, on the fact that elder abuse is hard to prove and easy to dismiss as accidents or natural decline. But I'm living proof that you can fight back, that you can trust your instincts, that patterns matter, and that asking too many questions about the wrong things is a red flag. David came over for dinner last week. He's doing better now, starting to date again, more carefully this time. Mom, he said as we cleaned up dishes, can I ask you something? Of course. When did you first know? When did you first suspect Vanessa was dangerous? I thought back to those early visits, to that first casual question about my medications. When she asked about my pills the second time, I said. The first time could have been curiosity, but the second time, asking the same question in a slightly different way, that was gathering information. And information gathering isn't casual, it's intentional. I wish I'd noticed. She didn't want you to notice. She wanted you worried about me but trusting her. She played you perfectly. But David, the important thing is that we caught her. We stopped her. And now she can't hurt anyone else. He nodded. Then, you're pretty badass, Mom. I laughed. I'm a 68-year-old retired pharmacist who drives a Buick. You're a 68-year-old retired pharmacist who took down a serial killer. Alleged serial killer. We couldn't prove the other deaths, but you stopped her from killing you. That counts. I supposed it did. Later, after David left, I sat in my living room with my evening medications in front of me. 7 pills, same as always. But now I appreciated them differently. Each one was keeping me alive, managing conditions that used to kill people my age. My blood pressure medication prevented strokes. My blood thinner prevented clots. My diabetes medication kept my sugar stable. My cholesterol medication protected my heart. These pills were supposed to extend my life, improve my health, let me age with dignity. Vanessa had tried to turn them into weapons. She'd tried to use the very things keeping me alive to kill me. But she'd underestimated me. She'd assumed that because I was elderly, living alone, on multiple medications, I was vulnerable and easy to manipulate. She'd forgotten that I spent 35 years as a pharmacist. I knew medications better than she ever would. I understood interactions, dosages, side effects, and dangers. She'd tried to use my knowledge base against me, and instead, it had saved my life. I took my evening pills with a glass of water and smiled. The house was quiet. Outside, the Phoenix sunset painted the sky orange and pink. Somewhere, Tom's roses were blooming in the garden he'd loved. Money couldn't buy moments like this, but knowledge could protect them. Vigilance could preserve them. And a mother's instinct could save not just her own life but her son's future. I'd protect my family with every ounce of wisdom I'd gained over 68 years. And I'd make damn sure no one ever tried to use my medications against me again.